Hi, this is Michael Veazey of Amazing FBA. Our sister podcast, the 10K Collective, is the world's newest e-commerce podcast. It's geared to the exact needs of 6, 7 and 8-figure Amazon and e-commerce business leaders. It's actionable but focused on how to scale your business and grow really fast for sale or long-term profit, not short-term hacks. We have in-depth talks with real e-commerce sellers and experts in industries like sourcing, team building, and managing cash. To find us, just search your podcast app for 10K Collective. That's 10K for kilo, COLLECTIVE. We are live on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify, to name but a few of the apps we're rolling out to. Or you can go to 10kcollective.com for show notes or to listen online.
I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hello there, folks. Welcome back to Amazing FBA. This is your host, Michael Veazey. Welcome to the show. Today we've got some Q&A stuff from it's Q&A Tuesday, just about still Tuesday. You may get this Wednesday, so my apologies. I've been up against the NHS and my own slight illness. Got bitten by an insect and I seem to react badly to such things, ironically, while I was out running for my health. But there you go. So some really great questions today that come from the Facebook group attached to the podcast. And if you want to join it, it's absolutely free. Go to amazingfba.com. That's amazing, F for Freddy, B for Bertie, A for Alpha.com/FB. That's F for face, B for book. Sorry about all the abbreviations. I guess 340 episodes ago or whatever it is now, I'm made a rod for my own back with the name of the podcast. But there it is, amazingfba.com/FB, F as in face, B as in book. And you can join us there and join in the debate. About 1,450 people there and growing every week. So we have a question today, or rather 3 questions from Dan Robinson. And Dan writes about 3 different topics. Typical of Dan, he's somebody who's quite active in the Facebook group and has written not 1 but 3 questions in one go. So it's quite complex, but I'll deal with them one at a time and then we'll get into the answers now. Very fortunately, Ashley Pierce, who is one of the 10K Collective Mastermind members, a $1 million a year seller on Amazon, and a very smart guy, many different backgrounds that are relevant, including manufacturing engineering degree and a background in consulting with companies that are trying to bring physical products to market. So he brings a whole host of stuff. Ashley, fortunately for Dan, got involved in the answers, so I'm going to be very happy to pass some of the answers that Ashley gave to Dan and then put my own 2 penneth in as well. So let's go. Here are the 3 questions. First of all, question from Dan, delightfully naive question, if I may say so. Number 1, is there a sales tax levied once turnover reaches a certain level on sales made on Amazon.com, i.e. in America? I have read this is charged on a state-by-state basis. Therefore, I assume that Amazon calculates this for sellers who use FBA and sends an invoice each month. If only, Dan. Ashley writes, answer, oh my gosh, no. Mixed answers on how to deal with this one. Be prepared to accept you're going to take on some level of financial liability and account for it. Listen out also to Michael Veazey's new podcast, the 10K Collective podcast. He's got some guests coming up who give you the 411. 411 sort of American slang for, I think, like the news, basically. I said, yeah, you're lucky, Dan, to be getting a nice long reply from a 7-figure seller. So first thing to say, a sales tax is an enormously disputed area right now. It's nothing like as simple as your question implies. I'm afraid that sounds like a rational situation, which we should have, and we may get eventually. So we do indeed have a new 10K Collective podcast episode coming out, or episodes, I should say, on this topic. Starting on the 30th of July, we've got 3 episodes on this topic with Paul Raffleson, who was an in-house counsel on tax for Microsoft and GE. So he was a very big hitter in tax law in America. Well, is a very big hitter in tax law. So Paul's view is very, very clear. Obvious caveat, I am clearly not a lawyer, and this can only be the most general advice. It is not a substitute for individual legal advice. Okay, so caveat over. Broadly speaking, Paul's message was, I think, pretty simple. Do not register for sales tax as an individual seller or as a small business, period. So quite different to the advice you get from people like Avalara and other such people who I'm going to have on the podcast, right? And one reason, to be fair, I suppose, is Avalara makes their living dealing with sales tax, people like TaxJar as well, so they're probably going to advise you to do it. Paul Ruffleson, I think, has less incentive to tell you not to do it, actually, because obviously he's not going to make any money from that. So in the end, I can bring these experts to you, and you have to make your own decisions. A lot of clever people I know take a different view. There is no simple consensus on this, okay? But what Paul had to say is worth taking note of, which is, broadly speaking, again, my understanding, that Amazon is already being required to collect and remit sales tax by some states, for example, New York State, and is going to be made to do so by other major states by the autumn of 2019. So California included, and several other states as well. There are quite a few other states that have not yet come in line to that. For example, Florida, which rejected the idea of the marketplace tax. Well, it's not marketplace tax. It is the marketplaces, mostly Amazon, being responsible for collecting the sales tax and remitting it to the states and dealing with the paperwork and so forth, right? But there are quite a few legal defenses under US Constitution, effectively, as I understand it, even if you're US based. If you're UK based, then I pretty much think my strong feeling at the moment is that you shouldn't do anything. Actually doing something and registering for it, again, my understanding from Paul is that you're just making yourself much more vulnerable to being chased down by the states for all sorts of other problems. Again, there is no simple consensus on this, right? I want to be clear. Very big name people in the industry do not agree on it, and individual sellers I speak to don't agree on it either, and there's some smart people amongst those. So it's not a simple issue, but the simplest possible advice I can give you is do nothing. And then the next simplest advice I can give you is gather the best information you can from the best quality people you can, and then make your own judgment. And in the end, guess what? As entrepreneurs, we always have to do that. We have to take responsibility for getting quality advice. We have to take responsibility for vetting the quality of the advice, who we're getting advice from, for looking at the advice and investigating it, and then making a judgment. And I guess this is one of those situations. So that's the best I can say about it. So, second question from Dan was much simpler. Can anyone recommend any US-based prep centers who can receive my shipments and forward them onto Amazon? Are there certain states which are more favorable to choose for a prep center to be located in? I think this is pretty straightforward. So Ashley said, are you looking for a prep center or a forwarder? He said, I send direct from China through a US provider who then just forwards to Amazon directly, Flexport. They also have a great onboarding process which will help you make sure you get reasonable warehouse locations for your deliveries by playing a sensible game when setting up shipments, saving you thousands of dollars. All of that is true. Flexport is indeed wonderful. One thing I wanted to say, because I've worked with Dan as a client recently, and I know that he may be starting off and working on a slightly smaller scale than perhaps Ashley's used to shipping in whole containers these days. Flexport's wonderful, but they generally deal in serious volumes, so you need to be looking at least several pallets worth. So probably 50 to 100, 200 boxes, or depending on the size of them, up to containers. So if you're just looking to say 20 to 25 carton shipments are not yet at the palletized level, just floor loading as they call it, you might just be looking for something as simple as FBA inspection, which will just receive units from China. They will check for damage in transit. They will test them if you want them to, I should say. They will take photographs of any damaged items if you want them to, and then they'll ship them on to Amazon. Pretty straightforward. I've used them several times. They generally know their business. Not absolutely perfect, but they are at least near to the main port that most goods from China come into, which is by sea or air. That would be LAX airport or Port of LA. So their facility is a little bit of a distance from it and a little bit into the country. So there have been allegations of goods getting a bit damaged in transit to the inspections center, ironically, but they're pretty good. The other people are Easy Prep. I haven't actually personally used them, but I've heard good reports, and other friends of mine have used them. A little bit more expensive, possibly a little bit closer. In terms of where they need to go, which states are more favorable? Yes, clearly California, or possibly Washington or Oregon, but it's mostly California for whatever reason. Port of LA specifically, or LAX, LA Airport, if you're air freighting or using Air Express, DHL, UPS, etc. So I think that's a pretty straightforward answer. I mean, if in doubt, try Flexport. If they'll work with you, then that will be fantastic. But my experience is that they do need quite high minimums. So then another good question, which is a little bit more straightforward, but it kind of is how long is a piece of string question as well, which is, has anyone recently launched a product on Amazon.com and would be willing to share their launch method? E.g. for generating the first few reviews, what launch service they've used, if any, etc. So Ashley had a load of fantastic things to say about this one, and Ashley launched a lot of products in the US, so I think this comes from a really reliable source. So here's what Ashley had to say. First of all, the early reviewer program. Use the built-in Amazon giveaways function. Direct people to a YouTube video that just needs to be a slideshow of your product and its features and benefits. No more than 45 to 60 seconds. You can make one in Canva or another free slideshow maker. And by the way, that's quite original advice. Most people aren't imaginative enough to do that. But that sounds very good. Be prepared to go low on price. I think that's absolutely critical. And that's actually the most important thing he said. So I'm going to discuss that myself in a second. Continuing with Ashley's advice for a minute. Use Amazon coupons. Hit up your email list. Of course, that assumes you have one. And if you're just starting out, you may not have one, of course. Use organic traffic. This is my team's bag, i.e. Ashley's team, at futurestatemedia.com, which I can thoroughly recommend. I mean, Ashley's team is fantastic. I've worked with them recently, collaborating more on a project around the podcast than on Amazon launches, but they really are great people. They're smart, and they really are, just generally so smart about Amazon, and they're really gaining a lot of traction in their knowledge and experience very quickly in off-Amazon marketing, in order to send stuff onto Amazon, which I think is super smart because not many people are doing that in the Amazon space. So I really think this is worth pursuing. Ashley's also said, I might also suggest reaching out to bloggers in the space and asking them if they would like to purchase your product, and you'll give them a refund of the full price if they write a review on their blog. Typically, they'll also write a review on Amazon. Just direct message them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. I personally tried this years ago and didn't have much success, but I think I was just lazy and also didn't select the right people. So I would just point out this is not a quick and easy way to do things. However, Ashley is living proof that this can be done very, very well. As he personally, I think they sold out a product or got very close to that purely on influencer / blogger marketing a few months ago, which is an amazing achievement. So if there's somebody who can tell you how to do it, it's certainly Ashley. Not a common thing, not an easy thing, but when it's not common, that means it's different from what everyone else is doing. So it probably has a good chance of success, but you're going to have to work for it. It's not just a push button thing like those jump sends or whatever other services. Coupon promos, which is much more standard stuff. Coupon promos, Ashley says, I'd also run a coupon code distribution promo using my website and AMZ coupon server, but you need to hook that up to a traffic source. Facebook ads are too expensive, so again, I'd rely on an organic traffic. If you haven't got any, you'll probably need to go the more expensive route, which is Facebook ads. Yeah. Broadly speaking, serious Amazon seller friends that I have, in the past, I would say up until a few months ago, ran Facebook ads with coupons and found that a very effective way of launching. I think in the autumn of 2018, I saw a sea change in that a lot of the coupon codes weren't giving the ranking juice that they once gave. And I think the reason for that is pretty simple, which is that Amazon lost a bit of its share price and got some pressure from the shareholders to make more money, unsurprisingly, because it's a very unprofitable company as a whole. So that has happened because they've really hugely increased their revenue from Amazon ads. In other words, Amazon is now, they did go through a phase of favoring external traffic, and they still like external traffic. So I think there's all sorts of nuances and debates to be had. But the simple fact is that the Amazon ads used to make Amazon about $2 billion a year. It's shot up to $10 billion a year. So Amazon, broadly speaking, wants you as a seller to be using their ads platform because it makes them profitable income as opposed to using their prep centers, which doesn't really make them any money. So I would say all of this boils down to the fact that it's going to be harder to make coupon codes as effective as they were in terms of ranking juice rather than full price sales. I'm not saying don't do it, but that means that the Facebook ads to coupon code giveaway to Amazon listing funnel, while still effective, is going to be more expensive than it used to be. So just, again, you've just got to look at your budget. I mean, how much more expensive is how long's a piece of string, and Facebook ads are not something you're going to learn overnight anyway, so that's another learning curve. But I would say I've heard of people getting 25 cents per acquisition Facebook ad costs in the past. I would suspect it's more like 50 cents to $1 per sale now, and maybe quite a lot more if you don't know what you're doing. So that is not an easy option either. It's a quick option, but it's quite a quick way to lose money if you don't know what you're doing. Organic traffic takes a lot longer to pay off, like several months longer, I would say, generally, from following Ashley's journey over the last few months, but much more cost effective. If you're wanting to launch next month or something and you don't want to spend much money, which is the usual combination, guess what? If you want to go fast, you normally have to spend more money. If you want to go slower, you're going to have to accept, yes, you save money, but it's going to be a lot slower. So make your peace with whichever way you go. JumpSend, something else that Ashley's mentioned. JumpSend is now launched inside of Jungle Scout. That's worked okay recently, but just be wary of resellers. True. I'm not sure that it's as effective as it used to be, but I still think it works. The advantage of it, Dan, is if you're listening, or anyone else in that situation, is it's simple. So I would start with the simple. I would start with something like JumpSend. If it doesn't really work, you haven't lost that much time and effort. I would certainly do it way before I do Facebook ads or blog or anything else. Most of all, spend a ton on PPC, says Ashley, which I couldn't agree with more. Budget for somewhere between $2 and $4 a unit, and don't be too shy in the early days. It's probably will be north of $5 a unit for the first 30 days at least. Tanking generally, I don't know your niche. Amazon.com can be even more ruthless than that. Lots of info there, but abbreviated, so feel free to ask questions, which is what Ashley said. And again, this is a great reason to get yourself over to the Facebook group, guys, because this man Dan's just put a post up and just got free advice from a 7-figure seller. So I'm going to add my own 2 penneth here. I think Ashley's given a ton of great options there and some solid basics as well. The only thing I clarify is, as well as spending a ton on PPC initially to get traction, 2 things. The first thing is just the basics of targeting. Really niche down to get winnable keywords. If the main competitors for a keyword are ranked, say, number 6 for that keyword in the search engine results, and are doing 1,000 units a month, then don't target that keyword unless you can shift even more units than 1,000 a month, which will cost you a ton of money when you're launching. If you're losing a few dollars per unit on launch and then you're spending money on Amazon ads as well, if you move 1,000 units at a loss in order to get yourself ranked, you could be looking at a cost of $10,000 or something just for one keyword. Now, if you've got $100,000 in the bank, then go ahead and do that if you think that's worth it. But if you don't, then be very, very sensible about the sort of thing you target. Most people just get way too optimistic about this. I mean, just because I see there's a market for coffee in the high street down the road for me, just because Starbucks is making a ton of money, doesn't mean that I think I can take business off Starbucks with a $1,000 advertising budget. Not going to happen. And the same is true on Amazon. So just because it's online doesn't mean that normal, real economics don't apply. There's a lot to be said about this stuff, but broadly speaking, just remember the basics. The total size of a keyword market is unimportant. What matters is the market that you can win. So just make sure you've assessed that realistically before you even think about what your launch strategy is. Just think about what keywords are you trying to launch to rank for. The other thing to say is make sure before you do anything that you measure your baseline now. So use some kind of tool, whatever. There's lots of different ones. Helium 10 would do it, for example. Zonguru does it. There's probably a Jungle Scout plugin for everything now. Not plugin, but web app. There's quite a few tools, but whatever you use for keyword ranking, make sure you set that up before you take action and take a baseline of where you're at. And then if you do something like run some Facebook ads or run a JumpSend or whatever it's called now, promo, then measure before and after. Otherwise, you can't really tell whether what you're doing is having any effect. The other thing I wanted to say is this: really reduce your price before you have any reviews or have a significant number of reviews. When it comes to reviews, the latter, like as in what is a significant number of reviews? Well, that's relative to your market, and it can be as low as, say, 20 reviews in America, and it could be even less in the UK or Germany. It could be, say, 5 to 10 reviews. More important, in my experience, is the average rating. So work hard to avoid 1-star reviews. Broadly speaking, every half drop in rating, and this is a huge generalization here, but my experience says something like every half star you remove in your rating is going to halve your conversion, which just destroys your economics. So really make sure you work on that. Now then, there's little point in spending a ton on PPC, for example, at $2 a click, if you destroy your conversion rate by over-optimistic pricing, right? If you have no reviews, everyone around you costs you $15 or $20, and you have priced your product at $20 as well, you're going to get very low conversion. Why is that? Because you look to be about the same as your competition in many ways, even if your photos look nice, but you have no reviews. So there's no social proof yet. So let's look through a tiny little scenario on this, and then we'll wrap this up. So let's say if you're spending $2 a click on PPC, let's assume, to simplify things, you're at the early stages of the launch, and so 50% of your sales are coming via PPC. Let's assume your price is, your break-even price for your product is $15. And by the way, if you don't know what that is, you must work that out. It's a critical number. You can't drive otherwise. So let's say your break-even's at $15 without advertising cost. And just remember that the entire point of a launch is to boost keyword rank for the target keywords. Let's have a look at a scenarios. In both scenarios, we're going to assume that the PPC cost is $2 a click. Conversion rate is constant between the PPC and organic, and that 50% of the sales are organic, 50% PPC. So let's take scenario A. The price is $15. So you're pricing it at break even. Conversion rate's about 10% because it's just too expensive. Ad spend per PPC sale is $2 per click. Takes 10 clicks to get the sale, which is $20. And then that's half of the sales. So that's $10 ad spend per sale. The loss per sale is $10, but your ranking boost is low because you've got very few sales happening. Let's say scenario B, your price is $7, so you're losing a few dollars on that. The conversion rate, however, is 33% because you're much better priced. The ad spend per PPC sale is $2 times 3 clicks to get a conversion, which is $6. The average ad spend per sale overall, therefore, is $3, and the loss per sale is $10. So the same as in the first scenario, but you get a much higher ranking boost because of all the sales that you're getting, right? So let me just summarize all those numbers. And if you want to check out the, I'll tell you in a second what the episode post is, you can go and check out the show note. Okay, so the number is amazingfba.com/339. So if you want to see this stuff written, it's probably easier to make sense of. So yeah, just to summarize that, basically, if your break-even point is $15 for a product, right? So that means, in other words, all your costs without ad spend comes to $15 per unit. And you must know that number. If you haven't, go and sit down and sweat with a spreadsheet until you got it, okay? Then you may think it would make sense to sell at break-even price, $15. But if you're advertising heavily, it does not, because in the scenario we've just looked at, same ad cost per click, the same, we are pricing $15 break-even price in one scenario and $7, i.e. making a loss of $7 per unit in the other. But because the conversion rate is so much better when you have a lower price, it ends up with the same cost per unit. But the difference is, sure, if you have a higher price, and you are not therefore making so many sales so quickly, you will probably spend money somewhat more slowly, but you will definitely spend about the same money if it's $10 loss per unit to sell through your whole first set of inventory. But you will be not really ranking properly. So the very, very simple summary of all that is, look, lower your price like crazy and spend like crazy, and then gradually bring your price up and gradually bring your ad spend down. That's the correct way to launch. Anything else seems less scary in the short term, but is a lot less effective in the longer term. So you got to do your sums, set the budget, and then launch aggressively. And if you can't afford to do so, stay out of that market. Coming back to the idea of really looking at your keyword research, it's just not worth half measures. Half measures won't do anything except lose you money, because you'll be trying to compete somewhere where you cannot afford to compete, or you're not aggressive enough. Just remember, it's not the size of the market that counts, it's what you can win. And to win against competition means focus, choosing, pick your fights, and going hard. And that's particularly important in the USA, okay? But it's generally true on Amazon and, more generally speaking, online, right? Competition has speeded up and become global and aggressive, which is okay as long as you're smart about it. You just need to pick your fights. So Dan, that's a hell of an answer to some simple sounding questions. Hope that's helpful to you, and hopefully that's helpful to you if you're listening. As I said, if you want to be joining in the conversation, get to amazingfba.com/FB. That's amazing, F for Freddy, B for Bertie, A for Alpha.com/F for face and B for book. And you can join in the conversation there and get some input from myself and maybe even the odd 7-figure seller. Thanks for listening.